Hey Ryan, how do I get project-based learning started at my school? I've gotten some form of this question nearly every day for the last decade from engaged educators just like you. So at Magnify Learning, we've created a free download to get you started. Whether you're a superintendent, principal, coach, or teacher, go to whatispbl.com to get started on your project-based learning journey today. Are you ready to bring project-based learning to your school? The PBL Simplified podcast will help equip you for your PBL journey with weekly need-to-knows, engaging interviews, PBL showcases from facilitators in the classroom, and PBL leadership episodes to move you towards a successful implementation of PBL. Because every learner deserves to be a part of an inspiring story, and we see daily that project-based learning helps make this happen. If you want me to answer your PBL need-to-know on the podcast, visit whatispbl.com and click on Ask Ryan to submit your question.
Welcome to the PBL Simplified Podcast. I'm your host, Ryan Stoyer. Excited to be here with you today. Did you know that we have a YouTube series with the same name? If you go to pblsimplified.com, you can subscribe to the YouTube channel, and you get one video every week, 3 to 5 minutes, on a different PBL topic. We've got some schools that take their entire staff through it. Some leaders are going through it right now to vet it, make sure it's the right next step for their staff. But if you're looking to introduce project-based learning to your staff, or you want to get a good overview of project-based learning, those quick, simple videos are a great way to start. I go through and talk about community partners, how to structure a project-based learning unit, voice and choice, the 6 A's, a little bit of everything. You get one video a week for the entire year. Just pops into your inbox, and you can play it real quick before school, wherever it fits in your day, 3 to 5 minutes. Great way to jump in. pblsimplified.com. That's the YouTube series. Today, we've got a guest on. We're going to bring Robyn Jackson on, and I've got to take a really great interview with her, and I think we're going to get into some ideas that will really kind of challenge your practice and where you want to go with your vision. But before we jump into that interview with Robyn, I want to jump on this need to know that really probably flows into the work that we're going to talk about with Robyn, and it's this idea of visioning and expectations. So when we're in my mastermind, or if I'm doing some coaching with principal or superintendent, for instance, we always ask this question. I say, when you and I talk 3 years from now, what has to have taken place in order for you to be happy with your progress? This comes from Dan Sullivan, who's a great leadership coach. Strategic Coach is his organization. And it's a question that really starts to make you think long term about kind of some interesting things. So let's break it down. Again, the question is this, and you can write this down and you can start to journal it, and you will be really surprised when the dam breaks open. At first, my coaching clients say, I don't know how to answer that, Ryan. Like that's too deep. And I say, okay, well, let's sit in some awkward silence and see what comes out. And eventually we start having this really great conversation. So here's the question again. When you and I talk 3 years from now, what has to have taken place in order for you to be happy with your progress? So we're getting you to start to vision, what would your school look like? What would your life look like 3 years from now for you to be like, yeah, this was really great progress. Not looking for perfection, looking for progress. And when we say this, some of it's specifically vague and some of it's specifically specific. Right? Some of it's vague because when we say what has to be happy with your progress, as I noted, part of that's the double win. Part of it is your school vision. Have you been able to implement your school vision and move that forward? Create a great culture of learning with your staff and your learners? But it's also, what does it look like on the weekends? Are you working every weekend? Are you working every night? Because that shouldn't be either, right? Like that wouldn't be happy with your progress. When I work with individual coaching clients or the principals and superintendents that are in my mastermind, my challenge is always, how do you keep the work within the workday? How do you carve out time for deep work? So you can go a lot of different ways with this question. where it might be, my health. Progress with my health would be really important. That would make me happy with my progress 3 years from now. So you'd say, I'm not working weekends anymore. I've got time in the morning to do a morning routine where I have time to meditate, to read, to work out. And then I know exactly what the initiatives are for this year and in the coming years. And my staff is bought in because we have a culture of progress and feedback and positivity. And that's what it would look like for me to be happy with my progress 3 years from now. And as you really dive into this question, you start to, have some rabbit trails you probably don't need to go down right away, but it'll start to bring out the big rocks, the things that are important to you as you lean into this question. Because again, like I said, it's often difficult with coaching clients to start, but then once we get into that conversation, we all know what it would be, what would make us happy with our progress. And once we know that, now we can start to work on that systematically with, goals and initiatives and teams and those types of things. But first we need to ask that question. So that's what I want to open up with as our opening need to know. Now we're going to jump into my conversation with Robyn Jackson. Now Robyn is passionate about building better schools. She's the CEO of Mindsteps Inc. She's helped thousands of K-12 administrators and teachers just like you, and she helps them develop a clarity and a confidence to turn their classrooms and schools into success stories. That's her wording. I love it. To turn classrooms and schools into success stories, right? We're talking about inspiring stories this month and how we bring them out of our learners, and it's something that Robyn's really passionate about. So I brought her on as a guest of the podcast because she's passionate about working with school leaders just like you. She's going to share some learner stories, which is always a win. We love that. And give us some quotes that will really challenge you. So I want you to listen to this podcast and get challenged to be your best self and to lead your best school. Enjoy this interview. Hey, PBL Simplified audience. We are super excited today. We've got Robyn Jackson on the podcast today, and you're going to love her bio. So she's the CEO of Mindsteps Inc., which I like the name already, right? We're taking steps with our mind. She's helped thousands of K-12 administrators and teachers develop clarity and confidence. Now, listen to the end of her tagline. I love it. To turn their classrooms and schools into success stories. So we're not just trying to get to where we're surviving. We're talking about thriving. We're talking about success stories. So Robyn, thanks for being on the podcast. We appreciate it.
I'm so happy to be here.
Thank you for taking the time. We like to ask our guests, we talk a lot about the why of education. Right? Why are we in this? Because it's hard work, right? It takes a lot of passion, a lot of energy. So we want to be driven by our why. What's your why for being in education?
So I have always believed that every single child deserves to be successful in school. When I was a teacher, I tried to figure out how do I prevent any child from failing my class. And when I became an administrator, I was always looking to figure out how do we achieve success for 100% of our students. And even now, what I do with Mindsteps, that is the goal. That is what I've dedicated my life to doing, is trying to figure out how do we do that? I think we finally figured it out, and we're showing administrators now how to do that in their schools. But my why has always been the same. Every child deserves to be successful in school.
That's so good. That's so good. And you would never have a vision statement of some kids, right?
No. No. I mean, what you're doing with a vision statement of some kids is you're saying that our vision is to fail a certain percentage of our students. And that's not a vision that is going to get anybody out of bed in the morning and help them do the hard work that we do. And if I'm a parent and I'm listening to that vision, I'm wondering, is my child in the group of children you plan on helping, or is my child in the group of children that you plan on failing? Whenever you say some kids, that's what you're doing. You're planning on failing other kids.
Yeah. And I like that I can hear in your voice that, because a lot of vision statements will say every child, right? But do we intrinsically kind of mean, well, we're probably not going to get those couple in the back of the room in the back left. Those kids we never reach. So we mean every child, but maybe not those. We wouldn't say it, right? But what do you think about that? Because when I hear in your voice, you're saying every child, hey, we've got a solution. Like, we're going to do this.
Yeah. I mean, here's the thing. I feel that most of us came into education truly believing in every child.
Yep.
And then along the way, experiences, the system itself has rubbed away at that belief. And so, even when I used to say, when I started Mindsteps, one of the things that I was really working on is helping every teacher become a master teacher. And you could hear people, they won't admit it when it comes to children, but they'll say it when it comes to adults. So I would say that and people would say, no, every teacher can't become a master teacher.
Yep.
And I thought, wait a minute, you would never let a teacher say that about children in their classroom. You would never let a teacher come to you and say, this child can't learn and they're not going to learn. So why would you say that about teachers? And so there's a systemic problem that we have where we say every child, but our systems are set up in a way that doesn't serve every child, that presumes that there's a certain percentage of kids who just aren't going to get it. And if you design a system that way, well, you can expect those results. And what I've been trying to focus on the last few years is helping principals and teachers design classrooms and schools that really are focused on every single child being successful. And a lot of people will say, well, they can't be successful right now. And I'll say, yeah, in the system you have, that's true. But what would your classroom, what would your school need to look like in order for that to be true, for every child to be successful? And when we dream that way, we really tap back into who we used to be when we started education. And we get back to that fundamental belief that has gotten rubbed out of us. And that creates new excitement, new purpose, new focus as we are working to serve every single child.
Yeah, that's so good. Sometimes we'll tell teachers that you need to dust off that why I want to teach report that you did in college, right? Like the inspirational, idealistic one, like just like you said before, all these things kind of crunch it up and put wrinkles into it. So we're going to get into the systems piece. I think it's a really important conversation. But before we do you have a student story that kind of backs up your why, that keeps you passionate? I've always got a couple in my back pocket for those really difficult days of like, hey, do you remember Skylar? Do you remember Dalton? Do you remember, Krista, whoever that is? Do you have a student story like that?
So I had a student who was in my advanced placement class when I was a teacher. She took 11th grade advanced placement. She was an AP student. And I had a rule, and we actually made it a school-wide rule. Because so many of our students were first-time college goers, we thought that it was really critical for them in 11th grade to master that research paper, because the research paper is really the first paper they write in freshman composition. And if they couldn't get it in high school, then it was likely that they were many of our students were flunking out a freshman year, because they could not pass freshman comp. And so we said, we're going to make this a rule. So we had 100% rule. Every student will write a successful research paper. And if you did not do that, even if you went to summer school, you didn't have to, you could repeat 11th grade English, but they didn't require you to write a research paper. So we said, even if you go to summer school, before you come back, you have to submit a research paper, or you're going to have to repeat 11th grade. And we took that hard of a line. Well, Rachel's an AP student. She thought that rule didn't apply to me. She did not write her research paper. She went to summer school, got the credit. And by the way, her mother was the chairperson at the time of the district-wide PTSA. So she thought she had plenty of backing. When she came back, my principal said, we have a problem. Rachel's mother is refusing. She's protesting the fact that we're making her repeat because she didn't turn in a research paper. So we're going to make her repeat a semester of 11th grade. And so he said, we're going to have a conference, and we're probably going to lose. You've been putting this 100% goal out here and rule, but we're probably going to lose because she's got all this clout with the board and that sort of thing. So we get into the conference, and Rachel is there, and she's sitting pretty smugly, and the mother's sitting there, and she goes, we will not have this happen. And I started talking to her mother about why the rule existed. I talked to her about the kind of people that we were trying to help our students become. And did you want Rachel to learn the lesson that she could skirt the rules and avoid the work? Because that's what we were doing. Surprisingly, the mother agreed. Rachel had to repeat. She had to go from AP English to an on-level second semester 11th grade English class. And to be fair, I set up something special with Rachel where she could do more of an independent study and really focus on the research paper and the discipline that comes with writing a research paper. And she turned in a research paper. She hated my guts the whole time. She graduated. About 2 years ago, I was speaking at an ASCD conference, and I saw a woman in the back who looked familiar. And after things were over, she walked up to me. She said, "Do you remember me?" And I looked at her, and it was Rachel.
Mm-hmm.
Rachel had become a teacher. And she said the thing that made her become a teacher was seeing the impact that a teacher could have on her life. And she started talking to me about how she was really struggling at that time. And that when I held fast to that and told her I believed in her and invested in her and held her accountable, it changed the trajectory of her life. I had always thought, when I thought about that story about how, did I do the right thing? I mean, is the reason, am I, pushing the research paper? And it just reminded me again that when you are committed to success for 100% of your students, even if it feels hard at the time, that what you're doing has repercussions that reverberate through a student's entire life, that it isn't just about passing a test or submitting a research paper or getting a certain cutoff score in reading and math. It's really about investing in students and helping them, showing them that you believe in them, and then helping them believe in themselves, helping them become the kind of people who can achieve whatever it is, whatever that bar is. And so I think about Rachel a lot when, during those hard days when I'm pushing for 100% and everybody's telling me it's not possible, it's not worth it, it doesn't matter. It mattered for Rachel, and it matters for hundreds and thousands of Rachels every single day.
Yeah, that's so good. Thank you for sharing that. And you can hear your why in that, right? And those student stories, the ones that kind of give us goosebumps, right? We need to tell more of those, especially during these hard times.
Right.
So let's go up a couple levels now. You talk about in your work, the hamster wheel of school improvement. So what does that mean, and what are the better options?
So every single year in the summer, we set a goal. And it's a goal that we were taught to set. It uses the SMART goal format in a lot of cases, and it talks about these little incremental improvements. We're going to improve 5% here, 10% here. Here's a challenge: as you are trying to chase that 5 or 10% improvement, whatever that is, you pick strategies that you think will get you 5 or 10%. But what happens if you pursued a 100% goal? You would choose strategies that got you to 100%. So when we, kind of limit our goals with language that talks about this tiny incremental improvement every year, it puts us on a hamster wheel where we're chasing 5 and 10%, and we're putting a lot of energy in something that's not going to get us to where we ultimately want to be. And over time, we hit roadblocks, we get pushback, then we start kind of, massaging that goal and saying, well, maybe we won't get 5% and that sort of thing. And every year we set ourselves up for defeat because the goal we set was not a goal that was worthy of pursuing in the first place. So we work really hard. And if we're lucky, we get a 5% improvement. But you've worked harder than what you get from that 5% improvement. If you're going to work hard, why not work hard for 100%? Therefore, every single year, rather than getting on this whole hamster wheel of just, working hard and not seeing results, you get on what we call the flywheel, we call it Buildership flywheel, where we are focusing on what we need to do to get us to 100%. And that creates momentum. And the more you pursue, the harder you work, the bigger the results are, because you didn't limit yourself to a tiny gain. You designed a process that really helped you pursue what you really wanted in the first place, which makes the work feel worthwhile.
I like that. So it's hamster wheel versus the flywheel, right?
Yes.
So this is a leadership podcast. We do 2 of these leadership episodes every month. How does a principal know if they're on the hamster wheel or the flywheel?
Well, the biggest indication is, do you feel like you're working really hard? You're working so hard and you're not seeing results that are worthy of the effort you put into it. And do you feel like you are almost an imposter? You're going in front of people and you're telling them this is the way to go, but you know in your heart that there's something bigger and better out there, and that you have just settled. If you feel like you're settling every single year, but you feel like there's nothing else you can do, if you feel like there's cynicism creeping in, if you feel exhausted and frustrated because you can't move as quickly as you want, those are signs that you're on the hamster wheel.
Yeah, that's some good symptoms to look for.
Yeah.
We've been talking about a 3-year vision plan, carving out some deep work time to do some deep thinking for our principals and our leaders.
And sometimes it's hard to do that because we hear about servant leadership and we get in the weeds. What do you recommend as maybe a first step? We talk a little bit about burnout. We don't stay there too long because I think sometimes that's hard to identify maybe in our work, but it sounds like that might be a symptom as well. If I realize, hey, I'm a principal, you're right, I am on the hamster wheel. How do I start moving off of that, step off the hamster wheel and start to move towards a flywheel?
So the first thing is that a lot of the burnout that we're feeling is a direct result of how we were trained. We were trained to chase tiny goals. So we were trained to say, listen, slow down, cowboy. 100% sure, we want every kid, but we can't get there right away. So we were trained that the more rational goal is a 5%, 3%, 10%. And so from the very beginning, the thing that drives us, the thing that makes us passionate about our work, we're told is not realistic. So we are starting from a place where we are acting in a way that's incongruent with what our heart is telling us really needs to happen. That takes a lot of emotional energy to stay in a place where you always feel like you're settling. So the first thing is we were trained to do that. The second thing is that we were trained in strategies and techniques. We've been taught things like servant leadership and transformational leadership. And those concepts all rely on one thing. You have to sacrifice yourself for other people in order to achieve your goal. And you can't move forward unless everybody's with you, which means that you will constantly feel limited by the people you are, quote unquote, serving. Because if I have to wait for my most resistant person to get on board before we can all move, you're always stuck. And that creates resentment and that adds to burnout, right? So the things that we were trained to do, the things that we were told are the right thing to do, are the very things that are leading to our feelings of frustration and burnout. So we have a concept called buildership. And the best way to describe it is that there's an old saying that says, bosses say go and leaders say, let's go. And we say that feels really good. Here's the problem with let's go. When you're standing with everybody else and you are constantly corralling everybody and say, come on, let's go. That's exhausting because not everybody's ready to move when you're ready to move. And when you think you can make 10 miles in one day, you're limited by the slowest walker in your group. So you might say, let's go all you want, but you're not going to hit 10 miles because not everybody in your group is ready to hit 10 miles. So what builders say, instead of saying go like a boss or let's go like a leader, builders say come. And the idea is that you want to free yourself from having to get everybody moving before you can take a step. As a builder, your job is to go out ahead. Your job is to get the work started because there's some people who won't believe in every child until they start seeing you work for every child. So you are free now as a builder to move ahead and not wait for everybody else. And you move ahead and you start building. And as you start building and people see, whoa, wait a minute, this really is possible. Then you invite other people to join you in building. And at the beginning, you may have a plan for building, but as other people join you, they may say, hey, you know what'd be better? We could do this over here. You could do that over here. You're stubborn on the vision, but you can be flexible in the details so that when people join you, they become builders too. And the more you start building, even those people who are reluctant, who are, kind of waiting and holding back, they get drawn in as well. And those naysayers, instead of having to get rid of them before you get started or convince them before you get started, the naysayers, after a while, they will look around and they'll find that they are the only ones left. And either they'll choose to join you as well, or they'll go somewhere else where they're more comfortable. But you have never stopped building. And so a lot of the reasons for our frustration and feelings of burnout is because we're working really hard and it's like we're spinning our wheels. We're on that hamster wheel again because we're trying to convince everybody else to move before we can move. But when you're a builder, you can start right now building. And as you do that and invite other people to join you, you get more what we call buy-in. I call it build-in because as people start joining you, they become builders too. And people don't tear down what they've helped build. So you stop having to drag everybody to the goal. And instead, people are now building that goal with you.
Oh, that's good. That's so good, Robyn. even when you said, let's go, there's part of me that's like, yeah, let's go. Right. I like how you differentiated there though, right? That we need to go out and build. And it really fits with some of the visioning work we've been talking about on the podcast. But I've got to go back to something you said about the vision, and in some way, the strategies we've been taught, I think I got this right, are incongruent with your heart.
Yeah.
And that just struck me, because we can't passionately go someplace that's incongruent with our heart.
Right.
So I think you're really freeing principals up. I think I could almost hear some shoulders go, yeah, that's right. That's right. There's truth in that.
One of the things we teach a lot is that we have been taught that you have to have a shared vision, right? So you create a vision by committee, and you go into that meeting, that vision meeting, with a strong vision. And by the time the committee is finished with it, it's rubbed down considerably. And that is, one of the many, many ways that kind of lead to our own frustration, because we're constantly, having to submit our vision, our passion, our heart to a institution, to the system, to other people who don't see it yet. And yet they have as much power over your vision as you do. That's so frustrating. We say, listen, the vision belongs to you, the builder, because you're the one who goes out. So when we tell people that, all of a sudden, people show you exactly what happens. People are like, are you serious? You mean I can own the vision? And the idea around shared vision comes with what I said earlier. You're stubborn on the vision, but flexible in the details. Mm-hmm. And the more flexible you are in the details, the more people join you and join in that vision and help create that vision. But it's after the fact, right? Like, you don't have to have that shared vision before you start. The shared vision comes once people start building. Notice the difference there. Again, your dreams are not being held hostage by people who can't see the vision yet. And yet, so that is exactly what you're describing, is exactly it. When you become a builder, it frees you of a lot of the baggage around leadership that has been kind of perpetuated over the course of time. At the beginning, leadership was probably more of a pure ideal. But in order to make it fit into institutions that already existed, over time, we've taken this concept of leadership and we've made it an artifact of an institution, rather than something that you can use to change the institution, to make the institution better. And so if you stay stuck in what we've been taught about leadership, you will stay stuck in the institution you already have. It's only when you step out of leadership and start saying, I need to do something better, I need to be a builder, that you can build something better.
This is really fun, Robyn. I love the way you're describing vision. We would agree with that idea that the leader gets to lead. With your wording, it'd be the builder gets to build, right? Like, you get to decide that vision. And that's really why you're there, right? Is to bring that vision and bring people under that. So we've got one more question, and then I want you to be able to give us some details where people can come and reach out to you. So I'm going to give you a little latitude on this. We do a lot of project-based learning work. So if principals are on the fence about project-based learning, or this idea that you're kind of bringing to us of switching their leadership a little bit, if they're on that fence, what kind of advice do you give them?
So let's use project-based learning as a really good example for the bigger principle. Everything gets sifted through your vision. So project-based learning on its own is fabulous. It's a wonderful way to spark curiosity and creativity in students, and to give students more voice and choice in their work. But if it doesn't fit my vision, I can take something that is really a powerful tool for teaching and completely destroy it. And you see that happen all the time, right? Where people are like, oh, we're doing project-based learning this year, but it doesn't fit with everything else that they're trying to do. It doesn't meet the needs of their students. They just saw a book or a presentation somewhere, and they're like, that's a great idea. We need that. So let's do that. So what we teach is that everything gets sifted through your vision, your mission, and your core values. And your vision is just one piece, right? So your vision, when people come to an organization, they have three big questions. The first question is, okay, what are we building? And your vision answers that question. This is what we're building. The next question they have is, okay, I know what we're building. Why is that so important? Well, your mission answers that question. And then the third question they have is, okay, I know what we're building. I know why it's important. What's my role? And your core values answer that question. Right? So when you have a strong vision, mission, and core values, then you can sift every decision through that. So whether it's project-based learning or whether it's something else, what you want to do is say, first of all, what are we building? Why is it important? And what's the role we play in building it? And then, does this fit? Or how can we make it fit? Right? Because there isn't one standard way of doing project-based learning. There are some principles involved in that. But when you sift it through your vision, mission, and core values, then you can do project-based learning or any other initiative in a way that has integrity, in a way that moves you closer to that success for every student. And in a way that gets all of your work in alignment. I mean, imagine if every decision you made was sifted through your vision, mission, and core values. You'd have incredible alignment. And with that kind of alignment, you can get so much more done instead of being, okay, now we got to shift and go here. Now we got to, instead of being distracted and having 25 different jobs every single day, you have one initiative, one job, and that's to pursue your vision with passion.
Let's get our hearts and minds aligned, right, under a vision, a mission, and now core values.
Yes.
Robyn, this has been a really fun conversation. It's definitely going to resonate with our audience. How can we reach out to you?
So we have something called Buildership University. So if you want to discover how to become a builder and how to kind of shed some of the baggage around what we were taught and really start doing this process, you can find me at Buildership University. I'm working with principals and the goal is that when you join, what we're trying to do is help you to achieve your vision. First of all, create a vision. That's a builder's vision, and then achieve it in the next 3 years. So getting to that 100% success for your students in the next 3 years, and how to do it with the people and resources you currently have so that you don't have to wait to get started. You can get started right now. And that is at buildershipuniversity.com.
All right. Well, we'll make sure that gets in the show notes, buildersuniversity.com. Robyn, thank you for joining us today.
Thank you.
I really hope you enjoyed that conversation as much as I did. I love the conversation around expectations. Sir Ken Robinson, has in his famous talk in Educational Paradigms, he says, should we raise expectations for learners? He says, well, of course. I've never heard an argument for lowering them. But then we also think, what does that mean? I like the way that Robyn talks about this in a planning, visioning context of, if you really believe that you're going to reach 100% of your learners, how does that change the way you think about your vision, your initiatives? Right? Let's really put that down on paper and let it affect the work that we're doing. We say every kid, no matter what, whatever it takes. And some of the best leaders I talk to, those are some of the words they use and the things that they believe and the words they use to inspire. And with that context, they can now plan differently than other schools do. So I think Robyn can really push your thinking on this. So go look up Robyn Jackson and her Builders University. This is really neat work, and I really think it pushes your thinking. It makes me think of Neosho School District out in Missouri is our demonstration site. And they have been asking this question: what does it look like to reach 100% of our learners? Every student, every day, whatever it takes. That's their motto that they live by and they're inspired by. And it does change the way they plan. It does change the way they look at data. Like some of the exciting wins that they have is that they're seeing a decrease in the number of learners that are in Tier 2 and Tier 3 interventions because their Tier 1 has gotten to such a high level. They're trying to reach all kids in Tier 1, and they're trying to increase their capacity there, and they're tracking different results than other schools do. Now, they still have kids that have IEPs, like they're giving them the accommodations they need, but what they're finding is if they can bring some of those into the Tier 1, then they don't need to catch kids because they're involved to begin with. But it starts with this mindset, these expectations at the leadership planning level that then affect the expectations all the way down to the learners. So it was a really fun conversation for me with Robyn. I thought it was really challenging for me as a leader, and I hope that you found the same thing and you'll take this challenge back to your work so that you can engage your learners, tackle boredom, and transform classrooms.